Kate Aird-Patterson. I'm here as a senior consultant with EuroMaTech. EuroMaTech, if you don't know them, are a company who are based in the UAE, but deliver training worldwide. They've been delivering training in a number of different fields for over 22 years now. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, they're accredited to a number of different associations and societies. My area of specialisation tends to be project management, although I do a lot of work also with strategic clients, strategic partnerships, stakeholder engagement, etc. as well. We are going to be here for the next 60 minutes, and I hope you enjoy our seminar on managing strategic alliances and partnerships. A little bit about myself to start with. I did say that my background and my area of specialisation is project management. So I am a fully qualified PMP, which is the most common and widely known project management qualification. I'm also qualified through the IPMA, the International Project Management Association, to a much higher level. So up actually to the PQ level, which is about practitioners. So it looks at physical skills, behavioural skills, softer skills, which I now tend to call power skills, as well as, of course, the project management technical skills. I've also qualified in terms of BSc in 2 different fields, and I'm also a Master of NLP. So a number of different fields that I am definitely that I work with. I do still work as a project manager. I also work as an international consultant, with EuroMaTech as one example, and I work as a facilitator, again, for a number of different companies. I do travel the world. I'm very lucky and have many global clients. I'm also a coach, and I have my own business as well, so I'm a business owner. I've got a little quote there from myself saying, I work with clients and individuals to help them become better project managers and focus on the competencies to aid them in their journey, because that's something that I feel very, very strongly about, and we'll be looking at today to a degree. It's good having conversations, it's good thinking about things that could be done, but we've got to think in terms of competencies. What are some of the actions that we can actually take, and are we physically able to actually manage those actions, to undertake them, to assist others to do so? And that's really what the focus is going to be for the next few minutes. Look at the protocols first of all. I always think it's a good idea to look at the protocols. So we will be starting with the general session. Nearly everything that we do today will be based on a general session because it's just 1 hour. But I will be asking you from time to time to respond individually. And some of the answers will be based on key questions, and sometimes it will demonstrate as polls. And I will make sure that I share that information with you. It should be that the screen is on mute, and that your cameras are, so your cameras are off and your audio is on mute. If you do wish to say anything, if you want to please use the chat area, that will be useful because I do keep that open and I try to then monitor the chat that comes up if you do have anything really important to say. I can answer either from the chat, or we can look at you releasing your mute and we can have a conversation then. Is everything okay based on that, or does anyone have any particular questions at this point? I'll give you another few seconds just in case anyone's typing in on the chat. Otherwise, we can move on to the next part. Okay, I take it that everyone is happy. Excellent. So the outline of what we're looking at today is really based on, in relation to strategic alliances and partnerships, we're looking internally and externally, and we're really then thinking about, based on the current situation with COVID-19, what is working in self-isolation and working remotely, and what isn't working remotely. Now, some people I chat to, and they've come up with some amazing ideas, they've identified some great tools, etc. And other people are really trying to keep everything going the same as it always was. And of course, that's not possible in this current situation. But although we think we can see a light at the end of the tunnel, and it may be, let's hope, inshallah, that that is actually the case, we still have to recognize that, a change is coming. And I think we will be doing many more things, working remotely, communicating through technology, etc. So again, I think that this is absolutely a worthwhile conversation to have, and we can think about how that's going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close the camera so you don't see me anymore, and we can then focus on the slides. Okay, so welcome to everyone. Okay, so what we're going to look at are the job functions or the tasks that you've maybe had to look at modifying or changing in relation to your ability to manage your staff or the partnerships that you actually work with. We'll also be thinking about, are there any things that you simply couldn't do or had to postpone in order to just be able to work? Sometimes we just have to say that's really not going to work, and we have to leave it until we can come back to it another time. Again, one of the things I said in my introduction is that a lot of people now recognize that there are a number of different tools or modifications that we can make to existing procedures and that will help us to manage our teams. So again, I'd really like to think that we can have some conversation around this. Also employing best practices that we can use to advance those goals in terms of alliances, team working, strategic partnerships, but managing to do it in a remote environment. And as I said, we're almost at the end of the tunnel. We think we might be at the end of the tunnel. What do we think will then change once the current crisis does recede? And of course, it's always good to think about, reflectively, because I always say that reflection, we learn as much from reflection as we did from the intent at the beginning of our journey. Because then, of course, we have the wisdom of what we've actually been through. So I will be asking you to look back now. What would you have done differently, or what would have made things easier if you had something else in place, or maybe trained people up in using different technologies or whatever they may be? Okay, so that's going to be the focus of our focus today for the webinar. So now, one of the things I'm going to be asking you to do is to click on a link that I'm going to put into the chat very, very shortly. And then there are going to be a number of different questions, and you will be going to another page. But what I'd like you to do is you go into the page, you use the code here. So maybe if you could write down this code. So it's 799355. And then there'll be some questions there that I would like you to answer. So the first one we're going to be looking at is the biggest struggle that people might have in terms of working remotely or working in isolation. Because for some people, working in isolation can be extremely difficult. I mean, if I just use myself as an example, I was working in the Middle East when everything kicked off and started, so I had to travel home back to Scotland. It took me 30-something hours on a 13-hour journey, so that was a bit of a journey. But my husband was actually stuck in Holland until this weekend, so I've spent 16 weeks on my own. And I certainly found that that was difficult, both physiologically and physically. Sometimes we like predictability, sometimes we like regularity, and there are a lot of habits and behaviours that are hardwired into our own life. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to chat. I'm just going to put the code there. So if you just want to click on that, it should then take you to the question. So if you click on the area on the chat box, it should take you to the question, and then you put in those three key areas. The three numbers, sorry, the 79, 93, 55. And then what we have is I have a number of different options that are available for you. So what are some of the biggest challenges you've had? Is it unplugging after work? Is it about finishing work at the right time and actually leaving work behind? Is it the loneliness that you feel because you've been isolated? Is it the lack of collaboration or the ability to communicate as much as you would like? Is it perhaps that you're maybe in a full home and there's lots and lots of different distractions going on? one of the key things that I said earlier was that I had to leave the Middle East and come back to Scotland. So I was in a very different time zone then from many of the people that I do a lot of work with. For many, the ability to stay motivated while you feel isolated is extremely challenging. It might have been that you'd actually booked a holiday, so you had some vacation planned and you weren't able to take that, or even at weekends, go for a barbecue with your family, for example. We're very lucky in the UK, in Scotland particularly, we have 4G everywhere and it never ever drops. So I have a reliable Wi-Fi signal, but for many people, that's again isn't always the case. And of course, you could also click other if you think of something that isn't there. So please just click in the ones that you feel might be the key ones for you. Once you click submit, if you would like to then go back to your if you would like to go back to the page, the webinar page. Okay, I can see that there's a few votes in. I've got 3 people voted. I'll give you another moment or two to see if anyone else wants to vote. Okay, so some of the answers we've got. 22%, the 2 key ones that were the biggest answers were unplugging after work, so people finding it difficult to maybe finish work at the proper time. And the other one at 22% was also distractions at home. After that, we had the challenges with collaboration and/or communication and staying motivated. And then those were followed. Oh, we've got another one came in. Okay, that's changed it slightly. So that one also agrees with unplugging after work, and that's now the biggest answer. Distractions at home is now the second answer. Collaboration and/or communication and staying motivated are the next answers. And then after that, we have the taking vacation time and the reliable Wi-Fi signal, followed by being in a different time zone and other. Surprisingly, no one said loneliness. I must admit that was something for myself. If whoever put other, would you maybe type in on the chat what you were thinking of, just so that we have an idea of what the other struggle was? Don't worry, we don't know who it is, it's fine. Okay, I think someone's typing something in now, so we'll just wait for it to appear. Okay, maybe change their mind. Okay, that's not a problem. So yeah, I mean, we can see that there are a number of different types of struggles for people working remotely or working in isolation. Working in isolation doesn't, as I say, have to be that you're like me and you were left on your own for 16 weeks. Working in isolation could be that you're working away from your safety net. As I said earlier, sometimes those habits are really important. Your teammates or your peers or other people that you can call on when you need, it is seen as very, very important. And all of a sudden, when people are then working at home, even though it might be within work time, for many, it's a challenge to kind of reach out there and call on other people. Okay, what we're going to do next is we're going to move on to another area, but this time we're going to ask you to provide your own words. So I'm going to ask you to go back to the same area, and what we'll do is I'm going to move to the next question. So I'm going to just move to the next slide. Okay, so here we have, I'd like you to include up to 3, it could be a word, it could be a sentence, but you only have a very short sentence, you only have 25 letters. And what are some of the challenges in relation to job functions or tasks that you are really struggling with in relation to being able to manage your own particular staff or partnerships. Now on this one, if you feel that the 3 aren't enough, you can submit again on this one. I have allowed that you can submit multiple answers. Okay, so back to the menti.com link. It should show you the new question showing, and I'd like you to just type in as you can, please. Okay, anyone like to put some things in? I've got one answer in so far. So I've got habits, new procedures, meetings. Anyone like to add anything else in? Okay, so I've got a few things coming through now. So I've got colleagues, behaviors, new procedures, leadership, meetings. There's in collaborative colleagues, that's a good one. Incomplete authority, unclear job descriptions. Yeah, because of course the job description was designed around an existing situation that we feel that we know and should understand. But of course that's not always being demonstrated as we go through. We'll give you another 2 or 3 minutes in case anyone wants to add anything else in. Okay, we're getting more follow-ups. Follow-ups again, yes, much more challenging now. We don't have the same level of accountability, for example, perhaps when we're facing people face-to-face in the office, or other people can challenge in the office, then, the accountability is much higher. But the follow-ups when it's over technology that, again, doesn't always work, then again, that can be a problem. People availability. And again, it could be down to the technology. It could be simply that, that they're just maybe taking other days off or other hours. They're not working the same hours as other people. And we've got colleagues on their own, and then we've got the colleagues that are in collaborative. So they're not working with you in the way that you need. Okay, we've got some more. We've got manager trust. So again, managers are maybe, again, very used to managing people when it's face-to-face, and they can, they can see what's happening. They can challenge people in a very, very simple way. But the manager trusts, either the manager trusting the team or you trusting the manager. Again, these are things that we have to be very, very aware of. The two that have came up the strongest, because the way that I'm seeing this is I can see the ones that are repeated consistently, our behaviors. It's about the fact that we have to change our behaviors in relation to the functions or the tasks that we've carried out, and also the meetings. So even though technology can be wonderful and it can give us access to the different types of information, there are still many challenges, and the meetings that we have may not always be as sufficient as we would like. Not everyone, for example, has access to face-to-face technology. So sometimes we might be using technology that's by audio only. Well, it might interest you to know that if we were to look at the effectiveness of communication, only 7% is through the words that are used. So, of course, what's our most common form of communication? It's emails. And yet, the only 7% of the effectiveness of communication is through the words, and that is everything that's in emails. How many times, if you ask yourself, have you received an email and misunderstood it or responded inappropriately? Or maybe sent an email yourself and someone sent back a response that you weren't expecting? And that's because it doesn't matter how well you word your email, you're wording it for yourself, but you don't know how it's going to be received by the recipient. If we then add 35% onto that, that is in relation to how the words are received. So the sound, the audible messages that are received through the actual information that we get. So if we don't have technology that allows us to look at one another, but we can just hear, and we're talking over one another, and we've got that static and those little stops and starts, that's going to affect the effectiveness of the communication even more. So we're not going to achieve the potential 42% of communication. It's very likely that we're going to be even less, because if it was just two people, then we may be able to achieve the 42% of effectiveness of communication. But if there's more than two people, and more than two people are trying to talk at the same time, and other people are trying to answer, to listen, to get their thoughts heard, etc., this is where we have the real problems. So we can see here that, we've got technical job functions and challenges with the tasks, but a lot that we also face are very much in relation to the soft skills. And as I said earlier, I don't call them soft skills anymore. Soft skills, some people think that minimizes the value, and yet, as a very experienced project manager, as a company owner that works around the world with different clients, I know that those soft skills, those very important soft skills, are actually my power skills. I'm not the only one that can manage projects. I'm not the only one that can give the technical information in relation to projects, but it's how I present the information, how I make sure that I'm heard, how I make sure that the audience understands. That's the difference. And that's why we call them power skills. So when you are communicating, please do think about that and remember that the remaining 58% was made up of the actual face-to-face, the ability to see, to look at people's face when they're talking, to see the expressions on the face. If we are having a non-virtual conversation and it's actual face-to-face across the table, of course, it's even easier. We can see body language, we can, modulate what's going on in people's heads, in their brains, just by, looking at their expressions on their faces, etc. So it's very, very powerful. And of course, we haven't got that at the moment, which is why there are so many challenges in relation to managing staff or partnerships. So, another question that I'd like to ask you to do, don't worry, it's not all questions. We are going to go through some slides as well. But I'm just wondering if there are any things that you simply couldn't do, or had to, think about altogether. So in fact, I've actually got, so anything that you simply couldn't do or have had to postpone. Okay, so go back to the click again, and it'll say the presenter has changed slide, go to slide. And I would just like you to type in if there's anything. If there's nothing, that's fine. You can type nothing. But I'm sure there have been some things that you simply have not been able to do or have had to postpone. Maybe it was time for appraisals, for example. You can't do an appraisal accurately, or don't do it well over the internet when you should be doing it face to face, as an example. So type in whatever it is that you've had to do. Okay, I've got one answer so far. Okay, so I've got 3 responses so far. 4, good, good. Again, I'll give you a few more minutes if you want to bring any in. And what I'll do is I'll start to read out some of the answers that we've got. So a stakeholder town hall meeting, well, again, if you're trying to work with alliances, stakeholders are extremely important for you. And of course, the town hall meeting is an opportunity for them to find out what's going on, but also a time for them to be heard. And although we can do it online, it can be really, really challenging to make sure that everyone has an equal say and really understands everything. Another good one is regular one-to-one meetings with team members. I've got annual vacation, so people have had to maybe put their annual vacation on hold, and also not being able to attend training. Well, I understand that because that's absolutely my field. And yeah, I can't deliver any training unless it's online, which, believe me, is it's great that we can do it, but it will never beat face-to-face. And then merit increase. So if you've actually done some valuable work and there's merit increase, that hasn't been actually achieved for some. And then another good one that we've got is, you know, when we're working on site and something goes wrong, it may be that we've got to use our creativity for innovation. And someone put here, innovation meetings not going so well as on site, which is a really good point because, of course, things go much, much more smoothly when we're working on site because we can physically see things, we can bounce ideas with one another, and it's extremely difficult to do so when we're limited to the technology limitations. Okay, so some good answers so far. We're going really quite well. Thank you for being involved. It really does make a difference to the actual session. So what we have now, and this is a quote that I feel is extremely important. Successful alliances and partnerships require several steps that all partners must take. Essentials, ingredients for success include trust, compatibility, and commitment to the common goals. Now, I say this because I do a lot of work with collaboration. I actually helped an industry in the UK, the ECITB, the Engineering Construction Industry Training Board. I helped them to develop a collaboration tool, which was originally developed for the oil and gas industry, for the offshore projects. But then we realized that actually this is a tool that can be used for many, many different areas. If you are interested in access to the tool, please let us know through chat, and I'll make sure that we can send it to you through EuroMaTech. Okay, it's an excellent tool, and what it does is it really gets you to recognize some of the key elements. Collaboration must be equally undertaken by all partners. So for a successful alliance and partnership, we've got to make sure that the collaboration does include trust. So you've got to leave your own agenda at the door. You've got to come in thinking about the good for the group. We also have to think about the compatibility. So are we working towards something that works well for the collaboration? And also, are we all committed to the common goals that the collaboration states? Now, that's me very much simplifying it, but collaboration is so important. They now have an industry standard related to collaboration. It's an interesting standard because the only one that you cannot get on your own. You have to be able to demonstrate that you have collaborated with one or more parties and done so successfully in order to be able to achieve that industry standard ISO. But it's certainly one that we recognize is hugely important as we move forward into the future. Does anyone have any questions or any comments at this point? If you'd like to type anything in chat, please feel free, and I can try and answer them. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, I think there's nothing coming in, so I will move on. When I look at the situation that we have nowadays, there's a number of different tools, and I haven't got all of the tools here, but what I have done is I've picked some of the the ones that don't just do the same thing, because there's many, many different tools out there. I've actually picked some that I like. So don't worry about the X and the ticks. Effectively, everyone that I've got here are ones that I feel are very, very, very useful. If you have a Mac, this is my first one. For good productivity, it's the one called Serene is very, very simple. And what it does is it identifies any of those pop-ups, any of those blockers, any of those things that distract you and mean that you are then procrastinating, not doing the work that you need to do. What Serene does is it helps you to cut it out. Now, I'm just giving you the names of them there, but if you want to take maybe a screen dump of this, you can then go and access any of those tools online. And in fact, again, if anyone wanted, I could certainly give you a little bit more information about each of those tools and how you can actually use them and some screen dumps to go with them. The next one is something called Rescue Time. Very similar, but you don't have to just have a Mac for this one. And what it does is it actually identifies apps that you're wasting time on. So you're not really demonstrating any productivity. You can then block access to them. Now, the good news is that if you feel, actually, no, I am being productive here, I'm maybe doing marketing, so I'm in LinkedIn for marketing, or I'm in LinkedIn for a particular reason, then you just don't block that one. But what it does do, it allows you to see how much time you spend. So perhaps if you then say, oh gosh, I'm spending 90 minutes a day on this, which is why I'm not able to maintain or monitor the amount of work that I should be doing, then what you could do is you could consciously try and limit yourself. Maybe do a time tracker so that you can then identify when you want to work on LinkedIn or whatever the associated item will be. Another one we have is Toggle. Again, Toggle works as a time tracker. It helps you to get things done faster. It also allows you to look at the rest of the team and their productivity in relation to this. So it's an excellent tool. It also allows you to think about how much time has been spent, not just you yourself, but other team members. And if you are charging out to clients, for example, it allows you to check, are you actually charging enough to cover the amount of time that it's taking you to complete your project? So this is, as well as a really productive team task tool, it's also a great tool for future estimating, because if you are then trying to set what we call your norms are then the measures that you use for either, well, I know that will always take me 2 hours to do X, or I know that I need to charge at least £100 or $100 or 1,000 dirhams, whatever, you know, the currency you're using to do that. You can then check on Toggle and say, have I been charging enough to do these kind of things? So Toggle is an excellent tool. Trello is another similar one, and it makes it very, very easy for remote teams to complete activities. It allows you to complete percentage completion as well. So it's not just about the full completion of activities. You can also demonstrate the level that you've got. It's a very simple tool. So if you don't feel that you're technologically driven or technologically focused, but you want something that's easy to use, then Trello is a really nice tool to use. One that's been getting a lot of press recently is Monday. It's an expensive task tool, but if you're working in an industry and your projects are expensive and the project delays or the project poor estimates or poor performance costs you into the thousands or even sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, then Monday could be the tool for you. Obviously, you would then invest in the tool. You'd also invest in training in the tool, but that can actually manage larger teams and much more complex projects. So that's also good for maybe a government program, for example. That could also be another very useful tool. We've got one that's called process.st. And this is a very simple checklist. So it allows you, it's almost like a to-do list for non-technical teams. And again, you can do it for individuals, but you can also do it for the teams. So it's much like a Reiki but a to-do list for a Reiki group. So it can be about who's taking accountability, who's taking responsibility, who needs to be informed, etc. And then you just kind of check against these. So a nice, easy to use tool. We have Spark. Spark is a collaborative email experience. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make sure that, much like the round robin emails, you know, make sure that the emails are shared together at the right time, and also where people that can then feed in and say who can do what and help people to you know, come into working on the tasks and help to complete the tasks in a much, much more efficient manner. Airtable, well, here I've got Imagine spreadsheet project management on steroids, but with an interface that's extremely intuitive, so anyone can use it. So if you do use Excel or spreadsheets, this is great. It allows you to see the information, access the information. It's extremely intuitive and very easy to train up other people to do. Doodle is a great one for scheduling. So all you do is you might put out some availability that you have on your calendar, and people then can connect to maybe select the times that they can manage. And then what you do is you then go for maybe the collective session where more and more people can actually meet. So it's a nice, easy way to say, I've got these 3 or 4 dates. Either I can run 3 or 4 sessions, or I'll just run one. And what we'll do is we'll go for the larger group, you know, acceptance. So it's a nice, easy way to organize calendars. And then Zapier, this is one where you can look at what are your favorite apps, and you can look at repetitive tasks that you need to do consistently and think about how can I then program them in so that I don't need to keep going finding this particular app or going and finding this app and then programming to do something. I can actually, it's almost like a shortcut, and it allows you then to do it from your desktop or from your phone instantly. So these are some of my recommendations. There are a number of other tools out there. Please don't think, I mean, Asana, I use Asana quite a lot for my time tracker as well. But what I tried to do was I tried to think about various types of team management tools that aren't all doing the same thing. And I think you'll agree that each of those do very different things. So if you haven't already done it, I would suggest that you take a screen dump of this particular page before I move on to the next. And as I say, if people are interested, either put on chat or contact EuroMaTech, and we can make sure that you can then get more of a description and even some information on how to use them and how to access them if you wish. Okay, one of the key things we've got to think about, because it shouldn't all be doom and gloom. You know, when we are managing our alliances and our partnerships, even when we're doing it in isolation, we've got to think about how we can still advance those goals from a remote way. So what I've got here is I've got the remote workers matrix of needs. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start on the top left-hand corner. So this is about the content under performance. And this is one of the things that might have been coming through you remember on the second activity when you were writing in some of these areas. So this might sit with some of the things we said, the lack of clarity on the expectations and the accountability, the ineffective remote working setup. So maybe we've got very much limitation in relation to the right technology and or tools that we can actually use. Maybe it's about the level of interactions that we have with managers or peers. And it wasn't always just work. You know, I've worked in a number of different industries. I've been very lucky to work in a number of different industries. And sometimes the social interactions are as important. In fact, sometimes, if not more so important than the work interactions. So I used to work for a company some of you might know called Technique. And I was a regional manager for Norway, Canada, and the UK. So very, very high level. So when I'm trying to interact with people in a work base, obviously my field was quite far and quite spread out. But I was based in Scotland, and I'd managed a direct team of 17 people. And what I used to do was one day, every month, we had a 2-hour lunch together. And I used to organize this lunch, and I used to pay for it. And then the company, then they said, "Oh, we'll pay for it," because obviously this was something that was valuable. And our one rule that we went on this lunch for 2 hours was that we had to sit next to other people that we didn't sit next to in the workplace. And we also could not talk about work. And, sometimes things like that were extremely important, but we've got an underperformance here when we're speaking through, through the technology, whether it be by telephone, by Skype, whatever format we're using. We don't have that same interaction as we might have had before. And of course, the level of support that's available, well, there might be no structure for that. Now, each of those, although we've said there's no structure, they're still linked to high well-being, because you might feel, well, actually, these are all things that are problems with the organization, but I'm feeling quite healthy and, quite good myself. But if we go to the lower left-hand column, here we've got low well-being. So this is where things can really affect you and maybe add to your stress or that feeling of isolation. So if there's lack of clarity in relation to the expectations and accountability, if you are feeling down, if you are feeling isolated, or you're feeling that you don't like technology and you don't feel as comfortable, then it may be that that lack of clarity that might not affect some of the people in a high well-being area might affect you hugely here. In terms of the ineffective remote working map, of course, the limitation of the access you might have might really start to frustrate you. I know that working with different clients, I have to use different types of technology, and I have some favorites that I love using, but some of my clients won't allow me to use that. Thankfully, I'm in the high well-being area, but if I was in a low well-being area, I might go into that session with the completely different attitude and a completely different feeling. We got the lack of interaction again with the managers or peers. For some people, that will drive them to distraction, and it will really affect them. And again, that having no support available is going to really make people feel distressed. Now let's move over to, if we could think about the remote workers matrix of needs, but think about it in terms of an effective structure, because this is what we are going to have to do. Even when we think things are going back to normal, the world is changing. We are going to be moving into using technology much, much more. So what we need to be doing is thinking about how can we make sure that we are going towards the well-being of the individual in terms of the high performance, rather than creating a structure that can lead to a distressed performance. So you can see again that everything is the same, but let's think about the differences. In terms of the high performance, the individual knows and understands the expectations and accountability that are there for them. Now, how can we make sure that it's not in the distressed performance? The answer is very simple. It's consistent communication. We have to make sure that we communicate. Not only do we communicate the expectations and the level of accountability, but we have to actually question them on their expectations that they feel we've given them, their accountabilities that they're willing to accept and be accountable for. And if they do feel stressed about that, what can we do to help them? That's a way to take them from the low well-being back up to the high well-being. How can we make sure that they've got an effective remote working setup? Do they have access to the right technologies and tools? Is it possible that we can do anything else to assist them, to aid them in relation to getting access? Again, it might be that we have to change the tool we're currently using and look for something else. But as we say, when we're working on those interactions, when we're looking at strategic alliances with our teams, when we're looking at with our, remote partners, etc., we have to recognize that the lack of morale tends to feed much, much faster than the high morale. We've got to recognize the demoralization that can lead to the organization, which leads to lower productivity, which leads to lower interaction, which leads to lower satisfaction. And eventually it can lead us to losing the partnership, to the team falling apart. So we've got to make sure that we can do what we can to put that effective structure in place. So we've got to make sure that we have regular interactions and don't just have meetings because we said we'd have meetings. What we could do is, if we have a meeting, and let's say we've said we'll have a meeting every Sunday morning or Monday morning, depending on which part of the world you work in, what we could say is, okay, we're going to have our regular Sunday or Monday meeting, but we're going to have one key question and make it something apart from work. You know, it could be, what was your favorite meal last week? Or, what was your favorite thing that you did last week? Or do you have a champagne moment, or I call them champagne moments, something to aim for that you can celebrate once you've achieved this week? And again, that's really good because A, you're sharing your potential champagne moment with others, but you're also making yourself accountable then for achieving it, because the next week, one of the questions will be, did you achieve your champagne moment? Now, I understand that some people in the audience may not drink. We don't have to have champagne. You can have some other kind of, you can call it an ice cream moment, and you get to celebrate with an ice cream, or a gold or a diamond moment, and that would be really nice if you got a piece of gold or a diamond every time you achieved that. I'm not sure if that's so achievable, but you can see where I'm going is we have to try and lend ourselves so that we show that we are setting the expectations and we're trying to address the accountability with all parties. And the last one, which is really important, is even though we might have regular sessions, we've got to make it clear that support is still available. So you can still reach me, whether by email, whether by phone, whether by Skype, or, whatever other tool you might have. And of course, you might decide to use one of the 10 tools that we were just looking at in the previous slide. Is everyone okay so far? Anyone got any questions? Okay, I'm going to move on. No hands seem to be raised, so I'm going to move on. Okay, so when we're employing best practices, this is a slide that's extremely important. I want you all to recognize that although we might be going through difficult times, it is really important to recognize that there is proven statistics in relation to things that are actually going on. So when remote working really does work, 77% of remote workers actually report higher productivity. They now don't have to worry about the stress of the travel to work. They now don't have to worry about, what's happening if maybe they have to take the child to school and then, drop the child at school and then get back to the workplace. Because what they might do is say, well, I'm taking a 30-minute break here and I can add 30 minutes on later. And as long as that's all approved, it does help higher productivity. 82% of remote workers report lower stress. Sometimes the stress levels are, again, based not always on just the journey to work, sometimes in work, when you feel that, maybe everyone's looking at you, you're in the spotlight and people are kind of looking at you because you have to come up with a decision or you've got to finish something, you will feel under stress. Whereas if you're doing this at home and you've got a timeline until a particular time, you won't be stressed until you've achieved that timeline. And then perhaps you're maybe saying, oops, I need another hour. But then you can just call out and say, I would like another 1 hour, please. Or, is it okay if I extend by? And the last one for me, which is extremely important because as a professional, I'm really interested in motivating and improving productivity and performance. And many companies actually see that when they have remote working that's working, there's actually a 13% increase in performance. So that's an excellent and very recent statistic that we've actually got. Okay, what I'd like now to do is ask, are there any changes that you've made based on the current situation that you feel that actually work? So you're going to go back to your same link again. And this time you're going to think about, so what did I do pre-COVID? And what am I now doing during or post-COVID that I've had to change? And what did you actually do that you felt that did work? Okay, so again, I'll get you to go back to your, so just again, you can click on the link or you can just go back to the page that you have and then think about, what are there any changes? If you have none, then please type in none, because at least then I know that more people are involved. Thank you. No, sorry. So grade the following in terms of what might change. So sorry, yeah. So this is effectively each 0 that you see when you go on a pointer. Each 0 represents 1. So 1 being strongly disagree to 5 being strongly agree. So any existing team or alliance strategies that you felt should remain the same. If you feel that the level of working remotely for team members will change in the future. If you feel the challenge of isolation means new strategies should be created. If you feel the need for more virtual tools will grow, and if you also feel partnerships and alliances shouldn't suffer based on where you are. Okay, so we're getting some answers here, which is good. So we have the majority so far are that the partnerships and alliances will not suffer if they're strong. I would like to think that I strongly agree with that, but I think what we have to remember, if you remember when I took you to collaboration earlier, even if a partnership or alliance is strong before COVID, if we don't change our behaviours to satisfy the needs of those particular stakeholders, it may be that they do suffer. So we'd like to think it will remain the same, but we do have to be aware that sometimes complacency can lead to disaster. We've also got then the next ones that are both the same. So the next most popular are that the level of working remotely for team members will change. And the challenge of isolation means new strategies should be created. Again, very, very good answers there. The challenge of isolation does mean that different strategies need to be created, because even asking people to work from home more, which many people enjoy doing, we have to make sure that they don't feel that they're kind of stuck in a bubble. They have to feel that they have that level of support. Then the next is the level of working remotely for team members will change, followed by the need for more virtual tools will grow. And then finally, it's a 50% vote saying existing team or alliance strategies will and should remain the same. So again, that's the one where, again, if we make the assumption that things remain the same, that can be quite a problem. So if you come back to the screen, if you're not already there, what I've got on the next slide is demonstrating that culture has to extend beyond the physical. If we're working remotely, or even if we've got people that are maybe working in satellite areas, you know, so maybe we've gone virtually with small isolation companies that are satellites part of the organization, we've got to make sure that we recognize that that is still a remote working environment. The culture has to be reinforced through good ongoing communication in order to maintain those strong connections. The team members need to feel that they know what's going on so we can maintain the communication as if they were there. We've got to use collaboration connection tools to match the culture of the organization, make FaceTime a priority and make as much of that as possible. We should always aim for inclusion and balance with access and airtime given to team members so that everyone feels that they are seen and heard. Integrate the team building and social interactions as part of the team's operating rhythm. And also by building a shared sense of accountability by setting clear goals for all of the team so that everyone agrees to do things collectively together. That one you've actually answered already, so I'll move on from there. So again, this is just saying, looking back, what do you think you would have made things easier? So just pop that into the chat. If you think that there's anything looking back that you would have done or if you had done it, it would have made what you're doing now easier. If you want to type anything in, please, into the chat. Okay, I think someone's typing in. Okay, I thought someone was going to call in. So what I've done is I've given 3 examples, and obviously there's many, many more things that you can think of. Maybe we have to look at our protocols. Maybe we've got to make sure that our protocols are really considered in relation to crisis management. You know, most organizations now have crisis management, but maybe we've got to look at them because this was a major crisis. More stakeholder involvement. And again, when we think about the last area, when more people said that, you know, if it's a good partnership, it should continue, that will only continue if we are continuing to be involved with. So even sometimes just sending out, you know, emails or blanket emails and making more use of technology can also be used in both of the above as well. But these are some of the things that we really have to think about. What I'd like you to do as a last exercise is just think about, have you learned anything or would you do anything differently as a result of today's seminar? So I do have that back on the click link. And I'm just going to move on to that one there. So next slide. Yeah. So what did you learn or would do differently as a result of today's seminar? Haven't got any answers yet, but I'd like to think that we might get some in. Okay. Oh, it looks like there's no answers. Okay. I like to think that maybe you do feel that you might go back and do some things differently, certainly around maybe investigating the 10 different types of technology that I offered you. Certainly for me, the key one is about communication. Communication beats everything. We need to think about how we can communicate better. Remember the percentages. 7% are what the words that we use. 35% is the audible messages, what we actually hear, and the remainder is made up of the visual elements, what we actually see in order to get the big picture. Please do remember that. I want to thank all of you for attending today. If you do, I will remain around for a few more minutes if anyone has any questions that they want to ask. I'm very, very happy. Otherwise, in whatever language that you do speak, I would like to say thank you for your attendance, and a copy of this webinar, a recording of it, will be made available on the website at www.euromatech.com. And if you go to online trainings and down to webinars, then you'd be able to come back and watch this here. But I want to say thank you very much for your participation. It's very, very gratefully received. Obrigada, Telma. And please do let us know if you want a copy of the 10 tools. I can give you much more detail in relation to those as well. Ooh, lots of Portuguese language, Brazilian or Portugal. Nice.